All right, so you're thinking about a career as an instrumentation engineering technician. That's awesome. It's got to be like being some kind of technical detective, right? Like for machinery. We've got all your RoleCatcher resources right here,
Yeah.
ready to help you totally ace that interview.
You got it. And the best part is, it's not just about, fixing stuff. It's about understanding how these like really complex systems work,
Yeah.
from programming PLCs to like figuring out why something just went totally haywire.
And speaking of figuring things out, RoleCatcher's career guide, it says that these technicians, they work with valves and relays and all that cool stuff. They even help to develop control equipment. They don't just fix it. And it's not just like one industry either. We're talking manufacturing, oil and gas, pharmaceuticals. RoleCatcher even mentions that there might be like travel opportunities.
That's right. And this is where understanding what each industry needs specifically, it's really key for just nailing that interview. Like pharmaceuticals, they rely a lot on precise calibration, because of all those regulations they have. So if you highlight your experience in that area, it could make you like a top candidate.
That's a really good point. It's like RoleCatcher's AI. It like tailors your resume and cover letter to each job description. But we'll get into all those AI superpowers a bit later.
Definitely.
Right now, let's try tackling some actual interview questions. That interview guide, it's packed of them, ready to jump in.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, here's a question that seems like pretty straightforward, but it's got some hidden stuff in there. Can you tell us about your experience programming and troubleshooting control systems? What are these interviewers really trying to figure out with that?
They want to know about hands-on experience, not just like a list of all the programming languages right? This is where the STAR method is so useful. Situation, task, action, result. So think of a project like where you had to troubleshoot a control system. Maybe a sensor was messing up, giving bad readings, and it was messing with production. So how did you figure out what the issue was? What steps did you take? What happened? What was the outcome?
So instead of being like, I know C++ SAC, I should say something more like, okay, so at this one manufacturing plant, there was this sensor that was messed up and it was causing all these delays. So I diagnosed the issue by, and then I'd say what I did, and then I'd be like, and by reprogramming the PLC, we were able to get production efficiency up by 15%.
Exactly. You got to have those numbers, quantifiable results. It shows impact. And don't forget, RoleCatcher can look at that job description with its AI and pick out keywords like PLC programming or troubleshooting. You can weave those right into your answer.
It's like having a secret decoder ring or something for job descriptions. Okay, next question. How have you ensured compliance with industry regulations and standards in your past work experience?
This is where you get to show them you're not just good with the tech stuff. You're safety conscious too. You can mention OSHA or EPA or NEC, whatever is used in your field. But again, don't just like rattle off names. Did you have to like implement some new safety thing based on an OSHA update? Did you catch a potential hazard and then come up with a solution that saved the company money and made things safer?
So instead of just saying, oh yeah, I know all about OSHA regulations, it would have a bigger impact if I said something like, when I was working at this chemical plant, I noticed that the way we were testing pressure valves didn't quite line up with what OSHA was recommending anymore, with their updated guidelines. So I talked to my supervisor about it. We analyzed everything really carefully, and we ended up totally changing how we do those procedures. And it actually ended up preventing a potential safety issue.
Now you're talking. That's what they want to hear. You showed responsibility, you took initiative, and you showed them that you care about safety.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about knowing stuff. It's about how you actually use what you know. Speaking of using what you know, the career guide talks a lot about continuous learning. In a field that's moving this fast, how do you stay updated? And what advice would you have for someone just starting out?
Well, it's super important to stay current, right? So I subscribe to a few industry publications, like Control Engineering is a good one. And I try to go to webinars about new technologies. Your listeners could check out some online courses. There are tons on sites like Coursera or edX. They could focus on stuff like automation or industrial networking, that kind of thing. And getting certified can really help too, like the Certified Control Systems Technician, the CCST. It shows you're serious about your career.
Those are really good tips. And what's really neat is that RoleCatcher's AI can actually recommend courses and certifications for you based on whatever job you're looking at. It's like having a career coach right in your pocket.
Absolutely. Speaking of personalized coaching, let's look at another question that tends to trip people up. Can you tell us about a complex project you worked on and how you overcame the challenges you faced?
Ah, yes. The classic, tell me about a time question.
Yeah.
But how is this one different, for instrumentation engineering specifically? What kinds of challenges should someone be ready to talk about?
Focus on a project where, like, unexpected problems came up. Maybe the system just up and died, or there was a design flaw no one caught. Interviewers want to see what you do when things go sideways. Like, imagine a really critical piece of equipment breaks down right before you're about to start running a huge production.
Okay, so we're talking about a real pressure cooker kind of situation.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend handling that kind of question in an interview?
You got to walk them through how you think, step by step, using that STAR method. Describe the problem, the steps you took to figure it out, how you fixed it, and then what happened. Did you have to get creative? Did you work with engineers or other techs to find a workaround?
So it's about really showcasing how you solve problems and how well you work under pressure while still, staying calm.
Exactly. And you always end with a positive outcome. Did you beat the deadline? Come up with some brilliant solution? You got to leave that interviewer thinking, wow, this person can handle anything.
Starting to notice a pattern here. It's not about just listing off skills from a resume. It's about telling a story that really shows what you can do. Okay, speaking of showcasing skills, here's another question right from the interview guide. How do you ensure the accuracy and reliability of measurement systems? And that just seems like super crucial for an instrumentation engineering technician, wouldn't you say?
Totally, yeah. Even a tiny little measurement error can turn into a huge mess. So when you're answering that one, you want to talk about calibration. What procedures do you use? Maintenance routines? How about quality control measures?
So I can mention using instruments that have been calibrated, and doing regular checks, following industry standards, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. But don't be afraid to get, like, really specific. Did you ever use a technique like loop calibration or maybe statistical process control? Because when you bring up the specific tools or techniques, it shows you're not just, talking. You've actually done the work.
Right. It paints a better picture of how much you know. Okay, so let's change gears just a little bit here and talk about some different systems. The interview guide, it also has this question. Can you describe your experience with pneumatic and hydraulic systems? Is that something that's still important? I mean, everything's digital these days, so.
It totally is. Yeah, yeah. A lot of systems are going digital, but pneumatic and hydraulic systems, they're still everywhere, especially industries like manufacturing and oil and gas. So if you've got experience with those, you definitely want to highlight it. Talk about, like, the components you've actually worked with, valves, actuators, pumps, the whole 9 yards.
So instead of just saying, yep, done that, I should talk about, actual projects where I use that knowledge.
You got it. Maybe you had to fix a leaky valve or calibrate a pressure sensor. And even if you don't have a ton of experience with that stuff, you can still show them you understand how those systems work.
It's all about, connecting the dots, right? So they know you've got the basics down.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for another question?
Hit me.
All right. How about this one? Can you tell us about a time when you had to work under pressure to finish a project? This one just screams, tell me a story, don't you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They want to know, can you stay cool when the deadlines are, like, breathing down your neck? Think of a time when a super important piece of equipment just decided to die on you. Or maybe the whole scope of a project just suddenly changed. Talk about what was at stake. What did you do? How did you figure out, like, what to tackle first?
And I'm guessing saying something like, oh, I'm great under pressure. That's not going to cut it, right?
Nope, not even a little bit. Show, don't tell, right? Did you have to delegate stuff? Did you have to work with other people? Maybe you had to pull an all-nighter to get everything back on track. Walk them through how you do it and emphasize those problem-solving skills.
And obviously end on a high note, right?
Yeah.
So you met the deadline, you came up with some amazing solutions, saved the day.
You know it. That's exactly what they want to hear. That you can handle anything they throw at you and still get the job done.
This is great stuff. It's like a master class in how to interview. Okay. Last question from the interview guide before we move on. Ready?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Okay. Can you describe your experience with process control systems? This feels like this is it, right? This is the core of what instrumentation engineering technicians actually do.
You got it. Process control systems are everywhere, and this is where your knowledge is key. So think about all the different types you've messed around with. PID controllers, DCS, PLCs. And again, don't just say, oh yeah, I'm familiar with those. Go deeper.
So rather than just saying, I've used PLCs, it would be better to talk about a specific project, like where I programmed a PLC to, I don't know, make a manufacturing process better or something like that.
Bingo. Give them those concrete examples of how you took what you know and used it to solve real problems. That's how you make your experience come alive for them.
Wow, we have covered so much. We've talked about technical skills and problem solving, safety, even why it's so important to never stop learning. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to RoleCatcher for a sec, specifically all of its AI superpowers. We talked a little about how it can help tweak your resume and cover letters, but what about getting ready for an interview? How can its AI help with that?
Oh, absolutely. Remember when we were talking about sneaking keywords from the job description into your answers? Well, RoleCatcher's AI can actually do that for you. It goes through the whole job description, picks out the key skills and experience, and then it suggests ways you can include those in your answers. It's like having a personal editor just for your interview prep.
That's incredible.
Hmm.
So it's not like generic advice then. It's giving you feedback that's tailored to every single job you apply for.
You got it. It looks at your responses, figures out what needs work, and then helps you create answers that are clear, powerful, and most importantly, relevant to that specific job. And if you want even more practice, RoleCatcher also has these AI-powered mock interviews, so you can practice answering questions, get feedback on how you're doing, and just keep getting better until you're walking in there totally confident.
That is so cool. Seriously, it's like having a personal coach right in your pocket.
Hmm.
It really does sound like RoleCatcher's AI can give you a real leg up when you're job hunting.
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially in a field like instrumentation engineering, right? Where the
Yeah.
technology never stops changing.
You're right, you're right. You mentioned before how important that is, that continuous learning. So are there any resources or certifications you think our listeners should check out, to stay ahead of the game?
Well, besides that CCST certification I mentioned, there are also certifications for specific systems, like
Mhm.
the Certified Automation Professional, the CAP. That's a good one if you're into automation. And just staying on top of what's happening in the industry, that's really important. Going to trade shows can be good for that, like ISA or Rockwell Automation Fair. You can see some of the latest tech there and meet people.
Networking, right.
Mm.
That's another thing that comes up a lot when you're thinking about your career. Any tips for our listener on building a good network in this field?
It's a good idea to join like professional organizations like the International Society of Automation, that's the ISA, or even just going to local chapter meetings. It's a good way to connect with other people in the field, hear about what they're doing, maybe even find out about jobs.
Yeah, use those connections. Learn from the pros.
Exactly. Never underestimate networking. Seriously. You never know. You might have a quick chat with someone at a conference and it's like, bam, it opens up all these doors you didn't even know were there. Such good advice. And it's so clear that this field is about way more than just knowing the technical stuff. It's about problem solving and communication and, like we said, always learning new stuff
Mm.
and building those relationships.
It really is. And you know what? Sometimes it's those soft skills that really make someone stand out in an interview.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about showing them that you're a well-rounded person
Yeah,
and that you really care about what you do.
exactly. So don't be afraid to let your enthusiasm show. Talk about what excites you about this field. Maybe it's the challenge, right? Like figuring out these crazy complex systems,
Mm.
or the feeling you get when you actually see a project come together.
Yeah, that genuine passion can make all the difference.
Well, this has been awesome. I mean, this deep dive has been so insightful. We've really gotten into what it means to be an instrumentation engineering technician. We went through some really important interview questions, and we even got to talk about how RoleCatcher's AI
Mm.
can help our listeners stand out, from all the other applicants.
I know. It's been so great chatting with you and sharing some of this stuff with your listeners. But remember, if you prepare, if you're always learning, and if you've got the right tools, you'll be in great shape. You can land that dream job.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So everyone listening, go out there, nail that interview, and hey, maybe in a few years, you'll be the expert on this podcast telling us all about your amazing career in instrumentation engineering.